Good morning, Turks and Caicos. Welcome to First Edition, where we dive deep into people and ideas shaping the future. Today's episode is all about youth leadership. And joining me in studio is an inspiring young man who's not only made his mark on the athletic field, but is now throwing deep into national development in a new way. He's a national youth parliamentarian, national athletes representative, national record holder, and a CRIFTA medalist. And now he's getting ready to launch the TCI Young Leaders Association. Have you guessed who my guest is yet? Please help me welcome Mr. Antwon Walkin. Mr. Walkin.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you for joining me.
Yes, it's good to be here. It's good to be here with you this
awesome to have you. But let's get started at the top. Was there a particular moment when you just simply said, enough is enough, we need to do something about youth leadership?
You know, I'd like to think that for all of my fellow youth advocates as well, that's almost an everyday clarion call. You know, it's something that we wake up and we see every day. And I mean, even as late as serving in youth parliament last week, you know, you stand and you give your contribution and you stand in that house. And I mean, I told a few people after that just giving a contribution in there, you rise to the level of the portraits that are on the wall. I would say one of the big moments for me, I had a cousin that passed away from gun violence in 2022. And you know, I think that grief is something that hits best when it hits home. And when you have those experiences with loss, with grief, and you know, battling whether or not you think that the government has a part to play in it, or even inadequacies from the police force, it pushes you into wanting to find your niche there. And I hope that I found mine.
Mm-hmm. But given the many youth groups and organizations that have come and gone, what makes you think that this one you're about to launch is going to be sustainable and long-term?
Well, it's built differently, right? And we're focusing on things that haven't been focused on in the past. For example, professional development. We've seen a lot of organizations come and go because they want to talk about advocacy, and you know, there's so much you can say and can't say because of your sponsors and all of that stuff. And so we want to focus on professional development. We want to focus on networking. I think that the biggest problem that we have as youth and as a country at large is that we have so many young people in so many different fields. You know, a lot of people don't even know that I'm a studying architect, right? And so if we're able to get those young people into the room together, have them have one medium where they can always come and talk to each other, and they know that, okay, there are 10 other architects in this group, you know, okay, there got to be an electrical professional in this group. I mean, we've created a network of over 300 young professionals. Mm-hmm. And these are all persons who are either studying to be in school or have a college degree. That's 300 young Turks and Caicos Islanders, right? And I mean, the work so far has been remarkable, and we have a great deal of work to do left. But we're built on networking, we're built on advocacy for all, right? It's not necessarily just what this group of people think. We try to put out polls and put out surveys and get information from other young people so that we know exactly what the pulse of the nation is feeling. So when we're called into a room with a minister, with the premier, we have justifiable information for them that the youth is feeling this. This is the temperature of what the youth are feeling.
And I'm glad you say you're starting there, because that's so important. I remember an era in Turks and Caicos when you met a young person, the only thing he or she wanted to talk about was sports.
Yeah.
So now that you're broadening that perspective and making sure that they're able to network, I think that's just simply remarkable.
Yeah. Sports is important, and it's something that I've mentioned in the school tour that I did earlier this year to all of the students that I spoke to. I wasn't always involved in sports, you know, and I made the reference to them because they were younger, that I was a big back when I was in grade 6, you know. When I was their age, sports was nowhere near what I thought my life's purpose was, and that's why I went to the schools to talk to them about their purpose. And so I told them I was a chatterbox, right? I used to talk too much. I probably still talk too much, but I found a way to use that for positive good, right? I found a way to use my ability and my love for reading and knowledge to be something positive. And so I want to encourage them not only to think of sports as an outlet, but find other outlets. You know, there's reading, there's writing, there's all kinds of artful creations. And so I think that it's important for us to have our students, especially the ones that are growing up now in this AI day and age with ChatGPT that could tell them everything, enhance and encourage creativity. Encourage them to be creatives, encourage them to be unafraid of moving forward in that direction, and so we can see the development of their personalities in a different way.
Yeah. Viewers, listeners, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Antwon Walkin. I mean, it's just simply amazing. Just listening to him now, I can see this young man someday really in the halls of Parliament, taking that first chair. So I hope you can see it with me. But he is our National Youth Parliamentarian, a National Athletes Representative. He is a Carifta medalist. He's all things wrapped up in one. So, Mr. Walkin, tell us a little bit about your athletic career. Is that over? Are you done with that part of life?
It's far from over. It's far from over. It's a hard story to tell you because it's very near and dear to me, but I had a lot of serious injuries along the back end of my Carifta career, up to the point of throwing at Carifta in 2024 with broken bones in my leg and torn ligaments. And so against the advice of my coaches and even the Minister of Education, I remember her coming to me the night before and saying, listen, we can love you either way. But the decision to go out there and represent the country, we weren't in a great position at that games, and I wanted to lead the charge as a team captain, giving us a medal. I knew that I could do that on one leg, and so I did it. But that decision, I'm still paying the price for. I've had to do some surgeries, some reconstructive work, and so that has delayed my track and field collegiate career. It hasn't gotten off to the start that I want to, but I'd like to think that there's a reason for that, you know. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have given my body the break that it probably much needed after my time in Jamaica. And so I think that we're gearing up for something even bigger and better now, where athletics is concerned.
What do you say to athletes of today in Turks and Caicos? We often hear the comment that we start practicing, you know, immediately before a regional or international meet, or our athletes aren't as disciplined as they should be. What's your take, and what would you say to them?
Well, the latter part of your statement is what's more important: discipline, right? Even if you don't have the training opportunities, it's important that when you do get those small opportunities, to be disciplined enough to show up every day and work hard. And then I would say to especially our high school athletes, there are opportunities that you'll come across, most of them in Jamaica, some of them in the Bahamas, some even in Grenada. Take those opportunities when they come. The very first time I was scouted by Kingston College is when I was in first form. And you know, at that point, 13 years old, of course, my mom would have found that I was too young for her to just send us away like that. But 2 years later, she did, right, at the age of 15. And we as a family have no regrets of it because of what we've been able to accomplish. You know, we went there with a goal and we accomplished it. And another thing that I would tell those students too, when you do get those opportunities, don't waste them. Because I think it's almost worse to take an opportunity out of school where they offer you a full scholarship, a full ride, you know, and all they want you to do is perform, work hard and perform. I mean, even where the grades are concerned, they'll accept passing grades. It isn't necessarily that you need to be the smartest tool in the shed. And so I think that when we waste those opportunities, it not only makes it worse for us, it makes it worse for the next Turks and Caicos Islander who wants to take on that opportunity, because it then becomes, oh, Turks Islanders don't like to work, we don't need to scout anybody from there anymore. And that was a stigma that my twin and I, who he is doing amazing things at Kingston College. He's a national record holder for hurdles. I don't think that there's anybody in the world that I'm prouder than my brother Rayvon.
That's awesome.
He decided what he wanted to work for and he did it. And people like he and I and Tanisha Gardner and other persons who would have done this last stint in Jamaica truly were the persons who changed the narrative of, okay, you can go and get a Turks Islander athlete because we're going to work. You know, there was a little gap in between Delano and Courtney and those guys and us, that they didn't have the best work ethic, right? And so it led to a bit of a dwindling, because everyone saw it, you know, a bit of a dwindling in the amount of athletes that we had studying regionally. So what I would say is take the opportunities, but don't waste the opportunities.
Yeah. Would you say that passion is a component of that discipline too? That you liked what you were doing and so you worked at it?
Well, I can be honest with you, and I don't know that I've said this before, but track and field wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do with my life, you know. It was more something that I tried and I was good at, and I knew the opportunities it could get me, whether it was schooling, whether it was travel, you know. And so I had I guess I would say an alternate goal that track and field could get me closer to. But persons like my twin who have wanted to do track and field all their lives, passion is what drives them.
Yeah.
You know, because at the moment of 6 o'clock in the morning, you don't really want to go to train. That's all that could guide them, you know. And so my goals would have guided me, and passion guides them. And so I think that a part of the issue is that too many people try to rely on passion, and passion can burn out. I mean, and track and field is what I like to call an unforgiving sport. You know, if you get hurt, they don't care. You know, you're out of the race. You're not getting any finishes, fee, nothing, right? And so because it's such an unforgiving sport, I think that it's so important for you to find a place where your goals meet your passion. Have a goal. Okay, I want to be great in track and field, but this is what I want to do. I want to be a world championship medalist or a world championship finalist. I want to get Turks and Caicos to the Olympics, form an Olympic committee, and that could even be how I serve after track and field. And so I think that it's important for the next generation of athletes to find a way for their purpose to meet the goals that they have in life, and they'll see a major difference in the development of their track and field careers.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit. I just mentioned my vision of you. I'm not sure how your mom feels about it, but National Youth Parliamentarian. Was I on the right track when I hinted perhaps at a political career in the future?
I'm all about service, and my mother is my biggest cheerleader. She and my father, they work very, very hard to ensure that my brother and I and my other siblings have every luxury life can afford us, and that we don't want for anything. And so I would say that if politics was what I want, I know that they would be behind me and support me. I do think, though, that there's a very big deal to play, or a part to play, that is outside the realms of politics. And I think that it's important that anybody who wants to be a representative has been on that other side, so that they know exactly what it is they would do on the inside. You know, because there's a lot of things that you deal with on the outside that ministers wouldn't deal with, that members of parliament won't deal with, and that is part of what pushes people towards politics. But I think that it's important for it to be a service mindset. You know, I want to serve my country, and I've done that so far as an athlete. I've done that so far with writing, being at Howard University. Now I'm the only Turks and Caicos Islander there, right? And so if that's the next opportunity for representation for me, I'll take it with two arms.
And of course, you're also a national athletes representative. So what does that mean? What does that entail? What do you do?
It's really keeping tabs with the athletes. It's something that I would have been doing already, you know, just as a senior guy in the game, being there for them, to speak to them. You know, we still have a couple athletes in Jamaica. We have a couple who are in the US as well. And then it's really and truly ensuring that during general meetings of the TC3s and all of that stuff, athletes' concerns are heard. And so it's just another opportunity for advocacy. I think that God giving me the gift of speech would be wasted if I wasn't using that to speak for his people, if I wasn't using that to make my community a better place the best way that I know how. And so that role has given me an excellent opportunity to do so.
Yeah. Now, tell me, the phrase young leaders is often thrown around, but what makes someone a true young leader in your eyes?
I think that, I wouldn't say overglorify, but I think that we have put leadership up to a standard that is so far away from everyone that people don't see themselves as leaders enough anymore. And I'm a staunch believer in audacious excellence, meaning that there's something about you that makes you excellent, and you need to know what that is, not necessarily waiting for other people to define that for you. And so in a journey to audacious excellence, to being excellent, there's a time when you have to lead, and even if it's just leading yourself, you know, leading yourself down the path that gives you goals and a plan and things to achieve. And so I think that being a young leader simply means you're not following the pack. You know, you're trying to chart your own path. You're doing what it takes for you to be a contributing member of society. You're doing what it takes for you to be a good Turks and Caicos Islander, so that when you have children, they can be good Turks and Caicos Islanders, and you set an example for them. And I mean, in forming this organization, it was simple for us, you know. We need to bring the youth together. We all have ideas, we all have concerns, everybody thinks differently, you know, even as simple as the recent issue that has been going around, read the governor's decision. We all have different opinions, and you know, that was a place where young people could come and say, okay, this is how I feel about it, and you know, maybe someone else has a different opinion, right? And so I think that that's the most powerful tool we can have right now as youth, having a place where we can come together and not be victimized, not be villainized for being a PDM or a PNP or an independent. You know, we are just there as young professionals having conversations and roundtables, saying how we think our country should develop and what we can do to develop it. Yeah.
Now, listening to you a while ago when you were talking about, you know, knowing yourself, so does Antwon Walkin wait to be validated?
I'll be honest with you, I love my mother's approval. I wouldn't say I do. I wouldn't say I do everything. Her and my father, I do. I appreciate my parents agreeing with what I'm doing, I wouldn't call it validation per se, but it almost gives you a safety net, because it's just like, okay, you say you was okay with it, but generally I don't. To me, I believe that when you have an opportunity to do something great, you can't allow the people around you to stop you from doing it. And it's something that my grandfather Hilly Ewing always used to say, that if you have friends that aren't doing anything, or you have friends that don't inspire you, they're not really your friends, right? You're in the wrong group of people. And I have a excellent group of people. The closest thing I have to a best friend is my god brother Donnie Gardner, and that's the person who I started my organization with. And we inspire each other every day to be a better version of ourselves, to be better young men, better contributors to society. And so that has allowed me to get where I am today. Good friendships, good family. I can't begin to thank God for the families that He blessed me to put me in. And so that has led to where I am today.
Yeah, but you're talking about young professionals, and we certainly agree that everything you've said is needed. But just listening to you too, it seems like there's so much more that you could do for that young man who isn't a young professional. How are you going to reach those individuals, or do you plan on reaching those individuals?
They're almost some of the most important people to reach, right? Because they are really and truly what I call the bread and butter of our economy. The people who don't necessarily have all the qualifications. And I think that it's important that we motivate them into technical fields, vocational fields. Not everybody is going to go to university, and that is a true marker that we all need to accept. We'll get pushes from the government, the ministry, to say, go to college, but that's truly just not what's in the cards for everyone. Teenage pregnancy, all of these things are real factors that affect people's ability to get tertiary education. And so I think that we need to also become a society that accepts people for who they are, in the right of, okay, you're good at this, let's get you to do this, as opposed to, okay, we need more doctors, we need more lawyers. I think that is the direct wrong way of looking at things. And so the moment that we become more expansive with our thinking towards making money and working, I think that we can include a lot more people in this upper society of the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics. Now, every good idea needs also a good structure. So tell me a little bit about the age range of this group, and you mentioned already, that was going to be one of my questions, about whether it was politically affiliated, but you said PDMs, PNPs, independents, everybody are welcome. But tell me a bit about the structure itself, and then the age group of your membership.
So we created our group based on Robert's Rules of Order in terms of the meetings and all of that, and we have 2 vice presidents. So that would be myself. I would be the president and founder, and then I have 2 co-founders in Andy Mizik and Donnie Gardner. And Donnie serves as vice president right now. We actually have a vacant vice president's position that we will be announcing our new vice president at the launch. And so that has allowed us to basically have a 3-way sword in terms of getting information out. I don't love finances. I'm not a money or funds person. And so when I started my organization, I knew that I needed somebody who was, I wouldn't even say more well-versed, because it's not that I can't do it, I just don't really care to. And so I know I needed somebody who was willing to do that, willing to handle the fund side of it. I can do fundraising, I can do soliciting of funds, all of that. I just don't really care to log it, right? And so I knew that I needed someone who could do that. I knew that I would need public relations, because as much as I may deal with the field and I know all the media persons, it's still important for you to have a singular face that is important. And so we have a fully functioning executive. We have a treasurer. We have 2 public relations officers, actually. We have someone who's in charge of just sponsorships, right? And so we've created an executive of about 11 people. And I think that it was important for us to create that executive also to keep us honest, because I have political ambitions, and there are a lot of other persons who do, and there are a lot of people who would want to join this organization to push those ambitions, as opposed to being genuine to the cause of what we're trying to do. And so it was important that we created an executive that could weed that out, that could see that, and as we say in South Caicos, call a spade, and also keep us responsible for the development of how we want to move our organization forward.
Yeah. Listeners, viewers, we're speaking to Mr. Antwon Walkin, an inspiring young man who's going to go places here in the Turks and Caicos. Now, tell me a bit about how are you ensuring inclusivity? Do you have members from the other islands? How are you going about that?
So I've actually traveled to Grand Turk a lot more recently than I have in the past, and part of that was outreach towards that community, letting them know that we are there. And that was actually something that was posed to me in youth parliament over last week. Is there anywhere for young people to go? And I told the student who asked that we have a home for you, right? And that it doesn't matter what island you are on. We actually carried, that is why I carried the school tour to Grand Turk, because I didn't want them to feel as though, okay, this was just done for Provo because I'm here. We as advocates have to be able to go countrywide, and that requires us to go on boats, hop on planes, do whatever we have to do, spend a night here or there in somebody's house. And so if that is what we have to do to ensure that every single Turks and Caicos Islander from every island feels a part of this organization, that is what we are going to do.
So is the association going to be recognized as an NGO? Are you tied to government in any way?
We actually already have our nonprofit organization certification. We've had it for a year now. We are seeking non-government status as well, just to ensure that we are separate and apart from the government, and we aren't necessarily pushed into that lane where they say, okay, they get funding from government and so this and that. And so we're trying to separate ourselves as much as possible from any other organizations. So we have our NPO license, and we are looking to launch early next month. And so in that launch, we will start to do more visible, active things, as opposed to, just visiting schools and speaking to students and getting students employed. Because over the last year or so, we've gotten about 20 to 25 people who came out of high school employed at different internships and things like that, on the condition, of course, that they were going to pursue a university degree or at least a certification. And so that is the type of development that I really want to do, helping the people who can't help themselves. I think that it's important that somebody stands with them, whether that's me or anyone else. We build and curate these platforms so meticulously, and sometimes we forget who those platforms should help. And so I think that this organization can do really, really, really good things.
Yeah. Now, you and I mentioned it before, but for clarity, and let me play devil's advocate here. Some may say that this association is a political springboard. Explain that.
I think that every good thing that we have here in the Turks and Caicos, people try to put a narrative to it that is political. This isn't political, and the main reason I say that is because we accept everybody. The PDMs, the PNPs, the PPPs, everybody is welcome in our organization. And in terms of it being a springboard, it's a place for networking, right? Every area that you have networking, you're going to have people who have different ambitions. We have people who want to be world record holders in that group. We have people who want to be the next millionaires of the Turks and Caicos Islands business front in that group. We have real estate agents in that group. Real estate is a very big field right now. Even architecture is a really big field right now. And so I'd be lying if I didn't say that there are people who have political ambitions in that group. And I would be lying if I said, if I didn't say that there are people who have those ambitions and use that group as a place to share their thoughts, their vision for this country. But I think that is also still necessary. It is important.
Part of the growth and development of the
country. Yeah, because I think that it's important that these people are really ride or die representatives above all else. When things get rocky, that, man, he's been representing from he was in high school. This is a young person who's been working his whole life for this country. And so this organization gives them an opportunity to know where they can work. I always tell people who ask me about getting involved in politics or anything of that sort, and I always tell young people especially who ask, it's important for you to find a niche. It's important for you to find a group of people that you resonate with better than anyone else, that you understand at a different level that no other politician or person who's seeking representation can reference them to. And once you create that niche, it's easy for you to move forward. Youth is my niche. I've been in their position a lot shorter than any other person who's involved in this arena has. And so it's important for you to find that area where you are well versed. You know how to help people. You can actually offer them help as opposed to promising them help. And that is what this organization has allowed us to do. It's allowed us to provide help for a lot of people and put some weight behind these credentials and these different people who otherwise wouldn't have been in the rooms that we're exposing them to now.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Walkin, I know we're talking about youth leadership and youth development, but in all that, in all that youth and young and age, where's the wisdom and experience in that? Where's the gray hair? Where are those individuals who are going to mentor?
So we actually, and you use the right word, mentor. So we have 4 mentors for our group. The chief mentor, my aunt, Miss Claudine Ewing, she's done a phenomenal job in terms of leading us through the nonprofit world. She's been there for a while, and so she's been able to give us sound counsel, help us seek sponsorships and everything that we've needed to do. Our other 3 mentors are Mr. Devin Cox, Mr. Drexel Seymour, and Miss Melanie Smith. All in different fields. You know, Mr. Cox comes from an energy background, Mr. Seymour comes from a financial background, and then you have, of course, Mrs. Smith, who does everything. You know, she's involved in talent recruitment and getting people to the level that they want to be, and that is exactly what our group is about. And so we wanted to create a group of 4 people who were a sounding board for every single young person in that group. No matter what sector you were in, there was something that they could tell you, or some way that they could guide you, as you said, with the gray hair, towards making sound decisions.
Okay, would members of the association, you said that they're free to express their views and they feel comfortable in this environment. What happens when there's conflict? Or has there been any conflict?
Well, you know, we just come out of election season. And so, you know, during the election season, it's rarely ever smooth sailing in these group chats and things of that sort. Everybody has their chief opinion that they believe debunks everyone else's thought. But I can say that as young people, we've done a very good job of church and state. You know, we've done a very good job of trying to keep active and aggressive political discourse out of the group. What we did was we allowed for, because we have 2 or 3 representatives in there, but what we allowed for members of the parties to do was to share rally dates, share specific information, as opposed to, you know, campaigning in the group. So there was no active, oh, come be a PDM, PNP in the group. That allowed us to avoid conflict during election time, and since then I think that we avoid conflict in the way that we respect each other's opinions, and it's a lot different from a past generation that would have believed that, you know, what they say is right. We have harked on in the opening of this organization that we are going to have differences of opinion, and sometimes it's not even so much a difference in opinion as it is I package what I say differently from how you package it, and so we can think the exact same thing and just saying it differently. And so because of those different packages, the different parcels of how people prefer to put out their information, sometimes conflict can arise. But and that is what we have the mentors for, and that is why I ensured that I had 2 vice presidents and 2 other people who were responsible for ensuring that there's order in that group, so it didn't always fall on me, because sometimes, you know, I may agree with that person who didn't agree with the other person, and so that's why we also created an odd number of upper executives, so that it was always okay. What do you 2 think? What do I think? Let's move forward from there. And so we've been able to do very good conflict mitigation so far.
So you have a good structure when it comes to neutrality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, let me go back to sports, because I find your athletic life and your sports life kind of correlates with this whole leadership thing. Would you say that your discipline in athletics has translated into your leadership in real life?
Yes. That's the simplest way to put it. Yes. I've done a number of graduation speeches. I have 2 to do this year again. And one of the things that I always try to leave with the students is that sports changed my life. You know, I probably would have been somewhere around the same level of advocacy or whatever have you at this point. But the platform that sports gave me, the work ethic that it instilled in me, is unmatched. And I could never, I mean, if I could write a letter to sports, it'll probably be 50 pages for how sports has helped me develop as an individual. And that individual development has led to where I can be now, in an advocacy arena, in a place where, you know, if your belly ain't strong, as they say, you may not rise to the top. And so I think that it's important for people to find that thing that gives them that discipline, that love, that passion. Yeah. For some people it's art, for some people it's singing. I wish I could have sing. But you know, sports created that for me. And so I always tell people, man, if you got one sport you want to try it out, because the discipline and the love and the passion and the fire that it instills in you is second to none.
What would you say are the 3 top challenges facing young people in TCI today?
Number 1, I would say, is employment. I think that there are too many young professionals who have qualifications who aren't working in fields that they're qualified to work in. I think there are too many Turks and Caicos Islanders who are sent away, whether it be by the government or different private companies, to study and come back and find out that there isn't a job for them in that field. I think that there are too many Turks and Caicos Islanders who are underpaid for the qualifications that they have. You know, people who have master's degrees who aren't being paid for that knowledge. And that has created almost a stagnance in people being ready and willing to go and further themselves because they ain't getting paid for it, right? And so I think that that is number one. Number two is that there aren't enough forums for people to come together, and that was the reason why I founded my nonprofit. A young man who leaves school, is enrolled in the college, and has a mentor who he can speak to, almost like a sponsor in AA, right? That person that he can always call for when he's facing something, you know, because we always face different things that we aren't necessarily always willing to share, right? But if they have that person, they are much less likely to go to a life of violence, to go to a life of drugs, of crime, you know. And so that is what we're trying to create, you know, a big brother system. Yeah. You know that you can talk to me, let's talk about it. You know, I may not have had the same temptations. I may have grew up in an environment where I was curtailed away from those temptations, or even taught more about it, you know, exposed to it to a level where I could say, okay, this wasn't for me. And not everybody grew up in that type of environment, and not everybody had parents who are as active as mine in ensuring that I not only that I wasn't necessarily afraid of it, but I knew what it was and knew that that wasn't for me, because fear can always be conquered, you know. Yeah. And so I think that that's the second most. And then the third one is economic opportunity. You know, I think that young people need to know the business opportunities that are there for them. You know, it's one thing for there to be opportunities, it's another thing for markets to become saturated very quickly. And it's a growing joke among young people, TI people like new things, right? And so they can go with the newer firm, they can go with the newer business out of the sake of it being something new that they haven't tried before. And so I think that it's important for young people to be motivated, for them to know exactly what they want to do, but to also create that opportunity for themselves. The government did a great thing when they incentivize real estate for young people. I think that there are a lot of other forms and a lot of other professions that need that type of investment from the government. I think that it's very, very important that we continue to have that type of domino effect across sectors where it's being protected for Turks Islanders. You know, we're not saying that other people can't come here and work. We're not saying that we don't want them. You know, we need population development. But as they say in Jamaica, the top of tops need to be Turks and Caicos Islanders. And so I think that with a development in employment, with a development in economic growth, economic opportunity, and with a development in creating a culture where young people can fail and rise again, where young people can speak with each other and be open, we can do some really great things as young people in this country.
So how is Antwon and his whole leadership group and his cohort of young professionals going to change that whole climate? What are you going to do to make sure that young Turks and Caicos Islanders are in the respective jobs that they deserve and they're qualified for, that they're equally paid? How are you going to change the whole economic or the socio-economic climate in Turks and Caicos? What are your plans? How do you see yourself making an impact?
I think that the number one issue in this country generally is communication, right? I think that there are a lot of jobs available, a lot of positions available that we don't even know about, you know. And so I think that the number one issue is communication. And we've created a group of 300 professionals, you know. They're all at different firms, different businesses, different areas and different businesses. And so that allows us to now have an open line of communication across the field, you know. If I'm an architect looking for a job, there are architects in that group who can then come and say, okay, we have a firm position available, you know, that pays, what, $5,000 a month. That would be an upgrade from whatever I may have been getting elsewhere, you know. And so I think that this huge issue, this national issue, can be broken down into a series of smaller issues, and that is how you really solve the problem, as opposed to trying to take it on and say, okay, guess what, all locals who have qualifications need to have a job. That's not something that we can put in policy or anything of that sort. And then on the organizational front, outside of bringing them together, it's also important that you have that support. You know, it's important that you can say that you're endorsed by the young people of this country, you know, that you have the weight of an organization. I am a member of this group, and you know, once we create the name recognition that we want, it would be an honor to be a part of our group, you know, because we want to eventually become, I wouldn't say a selective organization, but we want to have there be some aura to the membership, you know, of being a part of our family of professionals. And so by doing that, we create basically the best reference that you can have to say that you are a member of the Turks and Caicos Society of Young Leaders. There are 500 young people, other young people who listen to what I have to say and believe that I'm the best in my field and I'm good at what I do. And so it's really just creating that seat at the table for young people as opposed to waiting or trying to get someone to give it to them.
You know, you just mentioned a good point, talking about aura and, you know, that visibility. Do you intend to have pins so when I look at a young person, I can say, oh, he or she is a member of the TCI Young Leaders?
And I mean, even that too, it took me to another point. The way that we want to develop too is in terms of having seminars, you know, symposiums, things that give young people the information that they need. We've already been in talks with the Minister of Education, the Minister of Tourism, and the Deputy Premier for them to do, and the Minister of Health, of course, to do collaboration events. And one of the major ones that I want to do that I think that hasn't been done in this country before is a labor event outside of the Department of Labor, of course. I think that it's important for our young people to know their labor rights, to know what a job can ask them to do, to know what is expected of them in the workplace. You know, these are things that aren't happening. You know, and that is something that should even be done at the high school level. You know, going into the schools and saying, okay, these are the labor laws of our country. This is what we expect from a professional. This is what we expect from young people in this country to gain other employment opportunities and to develop in the private sector as an employee. A lot of people will tell you that you need to be company first, but sometimes it's more of you just needing to be more professional about the way that you carry out your business. And so we want to do all those seminars and symposiums. We actually have something planned for this year, as I was telling you, with the different ministries, to do a collaboration event where they can talk to persons who are in the civil service and persons who are in the public service, but not the public service, the private sector, so that they have a better opportunity to understand what's going on around them.
Yeah, that sounds great. Now, you mentioned relationships, and I want to go there for a minute. What's your relationship like with existing bodies? Let's say the Department of Youth. I know you already mentioned the Ministry of Education and those people that you want to collaborate on in that symposium, but what other existing relationships do you have?
I personally have an excellent relationship with the Acting Director, Mr. Dickinson. He is doing good things in youth, you know, trying his best, and I mean, Youth Parliament even also is a kudos to him, you know, and the Youth Department getting that done, because we haven't had a session in a while, you know, and so it's centered around ensuring that we create the relationship that allows us to be effective. So it's not necessarily that we are pandering or asking them, well, we are going to ask them for help, but it's not necessarily that we need them to move forward. We acknowledge that we are a youth advocacy organization. Not everybody's going to want to help us. Not everybody is going to love what we're doing. And so it's important for us to create relationships of respect. You know, I have a respect for you as the person who's in charge of whether it be culture, the Ministry of Education, or youth affairs, and you have respect for us as the young people of the country trying to bring our point forward. And so as long as we have that mutual respect, I think that we'll have excellent and well-oiled working relationships with whichever companies or organizations we want to partner with for events.
What support would you like to see from corporate TCI or the churches and the public generally?
Well, I mean, there's two main ways that you can support us, you know. Give us employment opportunities. So let us know that, okay, you need 3 interns, and we can go and find 3 interns for you, or give us financial support. And you know, we've had a lot of companies that have pledged financial support that haven't come through yet, and it's disappointing, you know. And a lot of NPOs struggle with the same thing, you know, a lot of pledges of support without the actual money in hand. And you know, money is what talks in the NPO game. If you have the money to have the events, you have more visibility, you have a greater impact. And so what we want corporate Turks and Caicos to do for us is to invest in us. You know, the best way that you can believe in a young person is to invest in them, because the knowledge, the funds, whatever it is that you are able to impart with them stays with them for the rest of their life. You know, that is your opportunity to teach one and be the change to developing a better Turks and Caicos Islands. And so we need their help. We need their help, and we're asking kindly, because we can't demand it. We're asking kindly for them to lend their assistance of sponsorships, in-kind support, whatever they can do to help us as an organization and to help the young people of this country develop into their true potential.
What legacy would you like to see this association leave in, let's say, 10 to 20 years?
Well, I'd hope that in 10 to 20 years, I would have been able to step down as president, because I actually, as much as this is something that I think is needed, is not necessarily something that I think that I want to run. You know, I think that it's important that the country has this organization, that the young people who are coming after us, I have a sister who's 10 years old, and so, you know, by the time she's 20, I want it to be an organization that has respect in our country, that is respected by our community, that is doing great things in this country. I want it to be a beacon of hope and a beacon of development, not just hope, you know, because hope is what we dream it to be. I hope that this organization within the next 10 to 20 years can be the change. You know, at that point you'd see members probably entering the political arena, you'd see members becoming those leaders in business and commerce in this country. And so I want it to be a situation where older members at that point, like myself and other persons who are in the organization, would be able to start giving back. You know, we would be the persons that they write the letters to saying, okay, we need this amount of funds. You know, we would be the persons pouring back into that next generation of young people. And I mean, we'll still be young, you know, but we will be those persons who they can rely on for change. And that was the whole notion of this organization. Let's build it, let's get it off the ground until we are the persons who can invest in it ourselves. Not everybody shares our point of view in terms of investing in this country, and that's fine. You know, but we are Turks and Caicos Islanders. We are strong, we are resilient, and we believe in our country, and we believe in the people of this country. And so Donnie and I decided that this is what we needed to do to develop our country, and so we will do whatever it takes to ensure that this organization can play a critical role in the development of young people across this country.
Walk us through for a minute the membership process. How does one join?
Well, it's simple, and we wanted to create a simple membership process because we didn't want it to be where the process was so tedious you don't have members, you know. And so it's as simple as you signing up the membership form and paying dues. Just like every other organization, we need funds, especially as a non-profit, and so dues are a very important part of the process. If we have 100 members, each paying $120 for the year, you know, that provides us with a huge financial buffer and allows us to rely a lot less on outside sponsorship to have our events and to make that community impact. And so we can have strength in our members as opposed to strength in sponsorship, and that is where we want to grow to. And so we are taking official members. We have about 150 official persons who have already signed documents to say that they're members. We haven't accepted any pledges from the persons yet, for the simple reason I like to show people what it can be and will be before asking them for money. And that is a big issue that we've had with sponsorships too. You know, they want to see us do something, and so that's required a lot of personal investment from myself and Donnie, but it is what we got to do. You know, we got to do what we got to do to see this vision forward, and so that's what we're doing.
What's your one message to TCI young people listening to you right now?
Believe in yourself. There will be more doubters than people who love you every single time, and you have to be prepared to stand up in the face of adversity and decide that you're going to be the best version of yourself. And as I talked about my personal mantra earlier, audacious excellence, you have to be willing to be different. You have to be willing to be looked at sideways, looked at funny. You gotta, when people cut their eye at you, take it on your chin and move forward. You have to be willing to be unpopular so that you can get what you want, you know. And so I think that it's important for young people in this country to believe in themselves. That's paramount. You know, with that belief in yourself, nothing can stop you, right? And not only believing in yourself, but also creating a standard for yourself that you follow no matter what anyone else tells you. And once you've created that standard of what you expect from yourself, you can then begin to give your impact in different ways because you know what you want to do and you know what you want out of life. And so I'd say take a moment, find yourself. Find what you want to do. Know your niche. I wouldn't say waste too much time. Don't waste too much time trying to do it. But belief in yourself is the single greatest thing that can push you in this world right now. My parents say university is a lot easier now than it was when they did it. And so I say the simple power of believing in yourself can take you a lot further than you think it can.
Yeah. And for those young people listening to you right now or watching you, who perhaps are just hearing about this Youth Leadership Professional Association for the first time, tell us again, what's the core mission?
We want to empower young people. We want to bring them into the rooms that they weren't in before. We want to create a network of young professionals across the Turks and Caicos Islands that allows them to be a part of a group. It allows you to be a part of something, to feel a part of something, to be a member. You know, it's more than a club. We want to create an environment that's conducive for development, right? And to do that, it means that we have to have professionals in different fields. It means that we have to be Turks and Caicos centered, but we also have to have the people who are working hard in this country at the heart of that. And so it's important that this nonprofit organization is not just a beacon for hope, but we are subject to change too. You know, there's a popular saying that courts rule on the temperature of the day, not necessarily the climate of the era. And so we want to create a temperature for young people where we can come forward. You know, we want to create a climate where people know that, okay, the young people ain't come to play. You know, these people are ready to lead this country. They're ready to be the change that they want to see. And so the development of that through this organization will allow for young people after us to have just as clear a vision for this country. And as I said in Youth Parliament, we got to work towards this independent Turks and Caicos that I dream of every night. And I don't know who else shares that dream with me, but it's important that we start that work now as opposed to later.
Yeah, and as we go, let's end with this. If you had the microphone of the nation in your hand right now, speak to the older generation of Turks and Caicos, and then speak to perhaps not just your age, but some young man or young lady coming up. Tell us what you want to say to those individuals, both the older generation and to the younger and your current generation.
To the older generation, I'd say your country needs you. It's been a while, you know. There are a lot of them who may feel as though they've passed the years where their impact mattered. There are a lot of them who are demotivated based on things that they've experienced from past governments, from past organizations. You know, they've tried and failed. And failure is an opportunity to do it better the next time. And so I say to those persons who have lived this life of advocacy that I'm trying to live, your country still needs you. Your work isn't finished. You know, we need you as young people. We need your knowledge, we need your experience, we need your understanding, we need your ability to share and to allow us to not make the mistakes that you did. And so the largest message that I could leave to the older generation of the Turks and Caicos Islands is that your country still needs you. What I would say to the next generation too, and there's a large amount of Turks Islanders who don't live here, you know, who don't live here in this country, and I'd say to them too, come home. You know, this country may not have had a space for you then, but it's important also that you create a space for yourself. You know, it's not always that you're going to get a seat at the table as opposed to you having to create a table and give some other people some seats, right? And so I think that it's important for our Turks and Caicos Islanders to stop viewing it as what can my country do for me and see what I can do for my country. Every single Turks and Caicos Islander has the power to deliver something to the people of this country. Whether it's that you can be the best makeup artist this country has ever seen, or the best chef, or the best coach, or even the greatest leader that this nation has ever seen. Your impact is important. And to young people, don't give up on yourself. What I would say is there are a lot of hardships that we may face as young people that the older generation is simply out of touch with. You know, some people have the biggest social media episodes of their life and they feel like it's the end of the world, you know. But what I say to our young people is, do not stop believing in yourself and don't stop working hard. The value of hard work transcends every sector in this country, because if you're on a job and they see you working hard and you're going off to study, they will ensure that you have a job when you come back, right? And so positive work ethic, being professional, showing up on time, these are things of discipline, as we talked about earlier, that I learned from track and field, that have allowed me to be an excellent professional in the workplace. And so I say, don't lose sight of your goals. Continue to work hard and don't be afraid to bust a sweat.
Yeah. You know, Antwon and I were talking about some nursery rhymes and things that we learned in school and little jingles that he was singing in his younger years. So as we end today, I think what you've just said is just so applicable to this one that I remember, and it said, shine like a glowworm if you cannot like a star. Work like a pulley if you can't like the crane. Be the wheel greaser if you can't drive the train, but be the very best of whatever you are.
Yes.
And so we want to thank Mr. Antwon Walkin for joining us. You are an amazing young man. Thank you so much. Thanks for, and hey, come back.
I'm always ready. I'm always ready.
We thank you and Donnie and your entire team for all that you're doing for Turks and Caicos. We're very proud of you as young people, as young professionals in these islands. And remember that we're here to support you in any way that we can.
Thank you.
This has been First Edition. We'll see you again on Thursday.